G'day guys. I was talking to a guy called Andrew. G'day Andrew, if you're watching. He sent me a message about he's just started investing and he's got some money, just a small amount that he's keeping secret from his wife. And I thought that was a worthy subject to discuss. I've looked at all my stats over the last 7-8 months that I've had this channel going, and most of the people that watch my videos are between 24 and 54, and they're mostly males. So this would apply to virtually everyone. That would be about 90% of the people who watch these videos. So more than likely, a lot of those people in that age group are in a relationship with someone else. And I thought it worthy that I talk about how married people cope with the financial issues. Look, as we know, the stats say that 50% of marriages or relationships, maybe all marriages I guess, end in divorce. And I think a lot of that is because of money issues. So what I'll tell you about is what happened between my wife and I, and maybe you can relate to where I was and how we sort of battled through that period in our life where we nearly broke up because of the pressures of having no money. So my story, I met my wife at a pub in 1998. Paddy Hannon's used to be the casino in Perth. It was 1998, September 5th to be exact. So nearly 20 years ago. We got married in 2001, January 2001, so just ticked over 17 years married. It started off great, obviously, most relationships do, but over time I felt like I was letting her down. We started a family, had a few kids, and I wasn't the provider that I wanted to be, that I thought I needed to be, as a man. And over time, over probably the first 10 years of our marriage, it got worse and worse because I was making promises and I had my own dreams of where I thought we would be at certain times, and that we would just naturally progress, and it wasn't really happening. And by the time we got to where are we talking, probably 2010, 2011, so 10 years into our marriage, by the time we got into that period, we were really struggling. I was struggling personally because I felt that I was letting them down, my wife and my kids, because financially we were still struggling. We hadn't really made much progress. From the outside, maybe it looked like we did. We were driving better cars and we were maybe living a little bit larger, but realistically we were carrying a lot of debt. We had 3 credit cards that we were juggling. We probably owed somewhere near $50,000 in credit card debt. We had 3 car loans that we were trying to pay off. We had the mortgage. We had tax debt as well. So despite how we looked, we were keeping up with the Joneses on the outside, but realistically we were really going shit house financially. And as a man, as a provider, that may sound sexist, but that's how I felt. I felt like it was my responsibility to make sure that we were getting ahead. And the fact that we weren't, as the male, it made me feel like shit. I guess I become a bit resentful towards my wife. I started drinking more than I should have every night. I fell asleep on the lounge for, I remember, 1 year straight, I did not go to bed for a year. You know, my wife would go to bed, she'd be there all alone. I would sleep on the lounge, still generally in my clothes, in my work clothes. That's the sort of point that I got to. And I was just really bitter about life, and you know, I had all the excuses in the world about why we weren't getting ahead, and none of it was my fault. So anyway, in about 2000, it was about 2012, probably late 2011, 2012, I turned 38, so yeah, 6 years ago. And to me, that was rock bottom. Like I say, I was sleeping on the lounge. I was basically an alcoholic, and really didn't feel worthy. And it was about that time that I got my first iPhone, and also we got Wi-Fi. And I went searching on the internet for some answers, and I come across a YouTube, which I would say almost saved my life, saved my marriage, I'm sure. Because I started watching some videos, and I started watching with a guy called Jim Rohn, who talked about his similar sort of life. He was a little bit younger, but he got to a point where he was behind on his promises, and just felt, you know, frustrated and trapped, and that's how I felt. So I watched a lot of Jim Rohn. I got into all these other what would you call them, motivational type speakers, and I slowly started to turn it around. It caused a lot of tension between my wife and I, because we had to stop living the way we lived, and we had to start again. I had to make some changes in our life. She didn't want to make the changes, but I had to make these changes if our marriage was going to survive. So I did. I said, this is the way that it's going to be from now on. It meant going through our budget and chopping out all the expenses that were unnecessary. It meant paying off our credit cards. So I had to have a surplus every month so I could, you know, get through these credit cards. And that took me a few years just to get through the credit card debt, because we owed over $50,000 on the credit cards. It meant paying off all the car loans. It meant, you know, paying off the tax debt that we had, and it meant starting to pay off the mortgage that we had. And I come up with a plan that I was just going to go for it, and whether my wife wanted to do it or didn't, it became irrelevant to me, because I wasn't going to live any other way. It was just pure determination to get this, get ahead, start getting ahead. You know, we wasted so many years, and it caused a lot of tension between my wife and I, because we even stopped talking to friends of ours that were not heading in the same direction. You know, they still want to live the old way where we spend freely and drink a lot and all that sort of party lifestyle that we basically had. I stopped hanging around with those sorts of people, and that caused a lot of tension. And it could have gone either way at that point for our marriage, but fortunately we did stick together. And after a while, after a few, probably, you know, a year, 18 months, I would say, we could start seeing some results. You know, the credit cards were almost gone, and then, you know, another year later, the cars were all paid off. And then we started saving in our offset account for our mortgage. And I remember when we had $10,000 in our offset account, and it all just come together, and we could physically see the results happening, and we got on the same page finally. As a man, that made me feel great, that now I was actually a provider and we were moving forward. And I could tell that my wife was proud of me, and it just made me feel great. And it saved our marriage. So if you're at a point where your marriage is struggling because of the financial pressures, then you have to make a decision, and your partner may or may not follow you or want to, but you have to do it anyway. You have to take charge of your finances, come up with a rock solid plan, come up with a budget, commit to it, and work on yourself to move forward. And that also means increasing your income as well, because if you work on yourself and make yourself more valuable, I'm sounding just like Jim Rohn here, but if you make yourself more valuable, you will get paid more. The world will pay you more, and then you can use that money to pay down debt, and once that's all gone, you can start getting ahead. And take it from me, as a man, that is the best feeling, to know that you are progressing and you're moving forward, and you feel worthy as a husband and a dad. So that's my story, basically, and that's how I got to where I am now. And I'd say now I have a wonderful marriage. We get on, great. There's no financial pressure in our lives anymore. I have a great relationship with my 3 kids. Well, when I left home, I did. Hopefully, still do. So now, for us, for my wife and I, it's night and day to where we were, 6 years ago to where we are today. And I'm just thankful that, I don't know why or how, but I got that determination to make these changes and get ahead in life, because life is so much better this way. Yeah. So if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling unworthy, you can do something about it. That's the point of this video. You can make the changes. It takes discipline. It takes some hard work. It takes some determination, but you can do it. You can do it. You can make that decision today to turn it around. And if you are feeling frustrated and unworthy, then I really hope you do make that decision, because it is totally worth it, guys. It really is.